Folks, there is obviously evidence that a lot of the pressure being put on the Biden administration is working. Here's Joe Biden at a donor event in Minnesota. Here's a very, very brief clip of a Jewish rabbi standing up and pressing him for a ceasefire. This is very quick because security got to them pretty quickly. But here's kind of a Jose-style intervention. Yeah, exactly. Well, this is against the president, right? So they don't fuck around here, right? This is not some, washed-up, has-been Secretary of State doing a talk at Columbia. This is the sitting president. So this video, for that reason, is not terribly long. But we do have some follow-ups here. So here we go.
Well, as a rabbi, I need you to...
Sorry.
Mr. President, if you care about Jewish people,
oh my God.
I need you to call for a ceasefire right now.
Get out! Sit down! Get out! We're going to play that one more time. It's only 10 seconds. Listen to the reaction. Oh my God, she's standing a bit. Get out!
Mr. President, if you care about Jewish people, as a rabbi, I need you to call for a ceasefire right now.
Okay, so that was the response in the room, and then the video cuts out, but we do have reporting.
That's always the response in these rooms. If you watch any of these interventions, including me and Jose on the Maddow thing, if you watch the one with Clinton, where she's asking if the security guard was okay, the one they did recently with Kinzinger. Oh, no, it was the Kinzinger one where she asked if the security guard was okay with Hillary. It's always like that with these crowds. Interestingly, the ones you don't get that, I take that back. The Hillary one, they didn't really say anything, and it was the same with Max Blumenthal with Maddow. When it's these, like, global think tank discussion things, they don't do that. When it's the hoi polloi, when it's like your average shitlib in the room, that's what you get. When it's like people in the room, not foreign policy professionals and such, they're not going to do that.
Right, exactly. But The Hill reported on this. Biden tells a heckler calling for a ceasefire, I think we need a pause. So apparently after that video cuts out, The Hill reports here, President Biden was confronted Wednesday evening by a heckler calling for a ceasefire at a campaign event and responded with support for a pause in the fighting between Israel and Hamas. Biden was speaking to an audience of 200 people at a fundraiser when one person in the audience shouted out, as a rabbi, I need you to call for a ceasefire right now. I think we need a pause. A pause means give time to get the prisoners out. I think he means the hostages, Biden responded. I'm the guy that convinced Bibi to call for a ceasefire to let the prisoners out. I'm the guy who talked to Sisi to convince him to open the door, he added, referring to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. One more slide here.
I think he's talking about the foreign nationals they're letting out through Egypt right now. It's always hard to figure it out with this fucking mummy.
Oh, yeah, that could be. Yes. Good call on that. Good catch. I wasn't sure what he meant by that. He was referencing the news earlier Wednesday that American citizens are among those who began to leave Gaza through the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. Up until his comment, the White House had said it would start considering support for a humanitarian pause to allow aid into Gaza, but it has rebuffed pressure from progressives and activists for a ceasefire in Gaza, arguing that it would only help Hamas. The heckler, again, heckler, not protester, heckler, the rabbi, who told reporters present that her name was Rabbi Jessica Rosenberg, was escorted out by security while singing ceasefire now. Biden went on to say that he understands the emotions around the conflict in the Middle East. Oh, that's nice. This is incredibly complicated for the Israelis. It's incredibly complicated for the Muslim world as well. I support a two-state solution. I have from the very beginning, he said. The fact of the matter is that Hamas is a terrorist organization, a flat-out terrorist organization. Now, we know now from that reporting that he conceded that he wanted a humanitarian pause. Anthony Blinken is now in Israel just about as we speak, I would assume, because news broke last night that he was going to try and instigate some sort of, quote, humanitarian pause. Now, once again, that demand in itself woefully insufficient. What does a humanitarian pause mean? Mean we get some food and water in there, turn the lights on, and so that they could, what, start bombing them all over again?
Right.
I mean, what does that even mean?
They want to save face. They want to save face. They want to be able to say that they pressured the Israelis to give a humanitarian pause before they continue with the slaughter. Exactly. So when they continue with the slaughter, they can say that they've been doing everything they can.
Exactly.
Which clearly, when the state is dependent on your funding, everything you can is you're not getting another dime until you stop. They could stop this today.
Right. Exactly. They could stop it today. They could stop it today. And every day that they go by without stopping it costs hundreds of lives. So up until yesterday, because don't forget, this intervention happened on Wednesday night. Up until yesterday, not a single United States senator came out in support of a ceasefire. That did change yesterday. First senator out of the gate to back a ceasefire, Bernie Sanders. No. Liz Warren. No. Dick Durban.
They wrote a strongly worded letter.
They did write a letter. Bernie and Warren did sign a very strongly worded letter to the president. But it was Dick Durban who actually beat them to the punch on CNN and called for a ceasefire when pressed.
I think a lot of people listening to people in power, President, you, Secretary Blinken, calling for a humanitarian pause, are asking themselves, why is that different from a ceasefire? 2 years ago, 2021, during an escalation of violence between Israel and Gaza, you called for a ceasefire and you said you, quote, couldn't disagree more with Netanyahu's policies, quote, when it came to the treatment of Palestinians. Is a ceasefire needed now?
I think it is, at least in the context of both sides agreeing. For example, the release of those who have been kidnapped should be part of this, immediate release. That should be the beginning of it. An effort should be made to engage in conversation between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Let's face it, this has gone on for decades. Whatever the rationale from the beginning, it has now reached an intolerable level. We need to have a resolution in the Middle East that gives some promise for the future.
Have you told the president, the White House, you think it's time for a ceasefire? Because that is a word that the president is intentionally not using.
Well, believe me, what I said earlier about ceasefires under circumstances, for example, the release of those who have been kidnapped as part of it, indication that this is a good faith effort on the part of the other side. But no, I've not communicated with the White House on that.
Well, they heard you now. Senator Lindsey Graham on CNN this week.
Trust me, when I talk, people listen.
And okay, so the leader of Hamas actually put out in an interview an offer to release the hostages in exchange for the 2,000 Palestinians that are being held. And this is something I did not even know this because it's so sick. They have 160 children in prison. Children in prison. They say it's because they're the children of terrorists. So you're punishing them for who their parents are? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is the oasis of democracy in the Middle East that we're supposed to defend against predations?
Yeah, no, look, I mean, it's just awful. This is what people have been saying, obviously, forever. And look at how long it took for one senator to come out. And when pressed, are you for a ceasefire? Yeah, I think I am. Have you told Biden this? Well, no. No, I haven't told the president this. We could order a ceasefire now, and there would be a ceasefire. We have the cards here. Have the cards here. There's a reason this is still happening, despite Israel losing a vote at the United Nations 120-14, because one of those 14 votes against the humanitarian truce was ours, and our voice is obviously the only one that pulls any weight there, because we back Israel. We back Israel, and that's what makes this whole situation so hopeless in the long term. I mean, with what Dick Durban is saying there, well, this has gone on long enough. We need a resolution to this conflict. And look, he's not the only one who is guilty of this. I think all of us, whoever, media people, audience members, politicians, all of us are guilty of ignoring this issue for far too long, too long. And so, it's not all on him, but we need a resolution to this issue now that it's gotten out of control. And who is going to stop it? Who's going to stop it? Joe Biden's not going to stop it. Donald Trump's not going to stop it. RFK is not going to stop it if he pulls out a miracle. The only guy who can stop it, the only guy who's interested in stopping it, is Cornel West, and all he has to show for his campaign is a quilt of John Coltrane that he keeps behind his head when he gives interviews to podcasters, and he has no infrastructure, no strategy, no ballot access, no nothing. And so that's how we got to a situation where all we can do is rage tweet and come on here and talk about this, and try to exert as much pressure on the system as we can. The fact that Dick Durbin came out and said that, the fact that Joy Reid came out and said what she said last night, which we're going to play next, that shows a sign that we are winning the PR battle. But the bodies are still piling up, and every day that there is not a ceasefire costs hundreds of lives and hundreds of families unspeakable pain. And so all we can do now, because our political system has just gotten so out of our control and has become so unresponsive to democratic input, all we can do is keep doing what we're doing in the hopes that one day, sooner than later, we can get a ceasefire and save hundreds of people who would have died the next day and the day after that and the day after that. In terms of any solution, how do you even begin to talk about that now? How can you even begin to talk about that? It took almost a month. Here we are, November 3rd, almost a month to get one senator
no.
to say, under pressure from a journalist, he didn't come out and give a press conference, we need a ceasefire now. He answered a question very meekly on CNN. Well, yeah, I think we do. And did you tell Joe Biden about that? Well, no. It took a month of slaughter for that to happen.
Well, and this really shows you how remarkably disconnected our supposedly democratic system of government is from the populace. I mean, if really our representatives represented us, there'd be a majority, right, in Congress and in the Senate calling for a ceasefire. Just a ceasefire. We're not even talking about completely rejiggering our relationship to Israel. There'd be an overwhelming majority because that's what you have in the public. There's a complete disconnect between our elected leaders and the public, and that's a big part of why the wheels are coming off. If there's a good thing to come out of this tragic event and atrocity, it's that it is opening people's eyes to foreign policy. It is making us realize we're complicit. We should have been speaking out on this. We have a platform. I mean, our audience doesn't, but you're right. I mean, all of us collectively as a movement share the blind spot of the movement we came out of, which for the most part was the Bernie Sanders movement. And we can see how useful he is on foreign policy by how he's been handling this. But that's a moral commitment we have to make. You know, we have to focus on this more.
Exactly. And, you know, in context, I mean, we finally covered the UAW strike because they got a deal from the third automaker, and so that ended. But I'll be honest with you guys. I mean, as much as, you know, we've focused on labor issues in the past, in the context of this, that felt awfully unimportant. Yeah. Oh, the auto workers got a 30% raise on their starting salary. Great. Amazing. Yeah, you know, like in the face of this, I mean, not that it's not important. Obviously, look, it's all part of one effort. The reason why, you know, the Israel lobby has such a grip on politics is because accumulated wealth has immense power, and part of the effort to stop that is through labor movements. And so, obviously, you know, I'm not claiming to make any intellectual sense by saying, well, big deal, the auto workers got a good deal. No, it is a big deal. In the face of this, though, it just doesn't feel like a big deal to me. I can't control my emotions, right? It doesn't feel significant in the
when you're literally looking at videos of children being bombed. It is, in context, hard to be like, yeah, man, those Amazon workers. Like, it is what we believe in. But if you look at the 60s, 70s era radicalism, which I think is the closest to some of what you're starting to see on the college campuses now, there was a very global perspective. They tied all those things together. They tied the struggle for wages and struggle for unions with an international global struggle. And our movement has been noticeably lacking in that global perspective. There have been, God bless them, there have been some, as exemplified, I think, best by Gray Zone, who have really tried to bring those issues to light, not just in regards to Gaza, but in regards to China, in regards to Africa, to have that much more global perspective. And honestly, as we get more into this, I can understand why so many on the left don't want to get into it, because, man, people without health care in America is depressing.
Yeah,
you don't know depressing until you start getting into some of these issues of horrors, just absolute horrors, like what we're exploring in this case.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Please clap.